Thank you for this warm welcome, and I'm delighted to join all of you this evening. So I would just love to see student groups like this coming out to hear great people like the governor. I applaud and appreciate the work by the Undergraduate Political Science Association in organizing this event and inviting Governor Davis to come here and address the students. Civic engagement and public service, which are the topic of Governor Davis's address to you this evening, are in the DNA of Berkeley. Public service is a core part of our mission, along with teaching and research. Berkeley students are passionate about doing good in the world for our country and for our great state of California. Governor Davis is an inspirational model for all of you. The 37th governor of California from 1998 to 2003, Gray Davis made education a top priority and made record investments in state infrastructure. Governor Davis greatly advanced the University of California mission by creating 4 centers of science and innovation on UC campuses, of which CITRIS is one. The political scientists haven't been here before. This is the CITRIS building. And QB3, another one on campus. That's Stanley Hall. So you can later go to Stanley Hall and see one of the others. He expanded state health insurance for an additional 1 million children and was the first governor in the nation to authorize stem cell research, which has ultimately led to California playing the leading role in therapies using stem cells. Governor Davis signed the first law in the nation to reduce global warming and greenhouse gases, and he created the first greenhouse gas monitoring registry. Today, he provides legal counsel at the Los Angeles offices of Loeb & Loeb, where he offers strategic advice to clients on numerous matters. He is a distinguished policy fellow at the UCLA School of Public Affairs, and he regularly speaks before various academic and civic groups. Please warmly welcome Governor Gray Davis.
Thank you, Chancellor. Thank you. Thank you, Chancellor Bergeron. I'm greatly honored that you would spend a good chunk of your day with me today. The Chancellor was here earlier when we commemorated the 10th anniversary of the founding of CITRIS, a research facility I'm enormously proud of, because when you're on the campus of Berkeley, you are at the premier public university in the world with the foremost researchers in the world, the largest number of Nobel laureates of any university, and it's just exciting to have a research facility here. So I thank him very much for that. He's been there the whole since the initiation of CITRIS, and I'm grateful that he's also here today. This is Berkeley. I have to say this early on because every time I would speak, it was a Charter Day. Every day, is it Charter Day or Freedom? What's Charter Day? They would announce my biography, and when they got to, just plug up your ears. When they got to going to Stanford, there would just be a chorus of boos. So let me just ask for forgiveness for my youthful indiscretions. Get that out. But in addition to its enormous academic excellence and tremendous research capabilities, you get more national science grants than anyone else, MIT, Stanford, anybody. You have a wonderful commitment to public service. I'm told that any given year there are 4,000 Berkeley students volunteering their service in a whole range of activities. That is phenomenal, because it teaches you at an early age that life is not all about you or me. It's about serving other human beings in a variety of ways. And when it comes to my topic of public service and civic engagement, there are just a zillion ways in which you could be of value to society. You could go into elective office. You could work for policy organizations. You could be a community organizer. You can be a lawyer, teacher, member of the clergy, scientist, member of the armed forces. You could do whatever your passion is, as long as you do it with a good heart and with the goal towards serving your fellow human beings on this planet, and hopefully making them feel better for their association with you. So this, it's a great compliment to Berkeley that public service is prized as much as it is public service while you are students. So please give yourself a round of applause for setting. When I was preparing my remarks for today, I came across a story attributed to President Obama, and he's telling a story about, he's actually telling a story that Ted Kennedy used to tell. So I guess it's actually Ted Kennedy's story, but I came across it in an article on President Obama. And Ted Kennedy tells about a young man and an old man walking on the beach. And there were starfish coming onshore because of the receding tide, and the young man kept picking up the starfish and throwing them back into the sea. And the old man came along after watching it for a couple of minutes, and he said, "What are you doing, young man? There are just so many starfish. They're just stretched out as far as you can see, and your efforts can't really make much difference." And the young man, as he was picking up another starfish to throw it back in the sea, he says, "I think it's going to make a heck of a difference in this starfish's life." And that's my point. Make a difference one life at a time. There's 1,000 ways you can do that. One way you can do that is to be a mentor. Take an interest in someone younger than you. Try and spend, 20, 30 minutes with them a week, but do it on a regular basis. You can have all kinds of social interaction over Facebook and texting, but try and be there physically for them at least a certain amount of time every week, and you'll be amazed at the impact you will have on a young life, and you'll be amazed at the sense of satisfaction that you have. All of you will at one point graduate from Berkeley, and you'll go on to great things. So this is a great university. It's got a phenomenal reputation. You'll get all kinds of job offers, grants, scholarships for graduate school, whatever it is you want to do. But you didn't do it all by yourself. You, as did I, as did each generation, stood on the shoulders of people who came before us, people who created Berkeley. At one point, there was no Berkeley. It was founded in, I think, the 1860s, but there was a point before that where there was no Berkeley, so there was no opportunity to generations at a point in time that there is today. So the people who created Berkeley gave you an opportunity that didn't exist before. Your parents, your friends, your fellow students, your relatives have all in some way contributed to the person you have become today. So the way to thank them is to sort of pay it forward. Find a way that you can have a similar influence on a young person. Mentoring is my favorite way to do it, but not the only way. I remember as a young man, I was at high school, and I was trying to make the baseball team. And I was unsuccessful as a sophomore. And the coach who then taught history, his name was Nat Reynolds, and he came up to me. I'm sitting on the bench and playing catch, but I'm not on the team. And we're about 6 weeks into the season. He came up to me and he said, and it shocked me. He says, "Gray Davis," I thought maybe I did something wrong. He says, "I've been keeping my eye on you, and you can actually make something out of your life if you just had a little ambition and just had a little drive." And the people who know me in life would not accuse me of lacking for ambition or drive, but at that point in my life, I did. I was just wandering around. I had no goal, no plans, no nothing. He gave me, we didn't have the internet, email, cell phones, nothing in those days. So he gave me his home phone, and he says, "If you have any questions ever, whether it's a homework assignment or there's something troubling you or you don't want to share with anyone else, but you feel you can share with me, whatever it is, I'm going to be there for you." I mean, it blew me away. Just telling the story sends chills down my spine just thinking about it today. That one conversation changed the trajectory of my life. I went on to make the baseball team. I actually became a starting shortstop and captained the team. I graduated second in my class. I went to that school I won't mention again. And I went to Columbia Law School. I was a captain in the U.S. Army in Vietnam. I came back, and eventually became governor of California. Now, do I attribute all of that to that one conversation? I do. Because he took a life that was just sort of wandering around out there. I'm not saying I'd end up behind bars. I don't think that would happen. But, I was just drifting along. Something would have happened to me, and kind of just moved it and said, see if you can't do something that helps other human beings and it led to a life where we had the opportunity to do a lot of good things. So I think you'll find, as you move through your career here at Berkeley, that there's nothing you can't do, but there's nothing you have to do. You can, if you want to go into politics, I would suggest that at some point you intern in the office of an elected official, be it a city council person or state senator or assembly person or congressperson, all of whom represent this area in various capacities, a member of the Board of Education, and just learn as much as you can, ask as many questions, volunteer, drive people around, interact with them, learn as much about what they do, how they make decisions, and you'll find that they appreciate your always being there and always being responsive. They'll give you more responsibilities. You'll learn more and more about that task, and you'll be prepared to help someone run for that office, run for it yourself, teach a course on it. I mean, it'll open up a lot of opportunities. If you're more inclined toward policy rather than be in public life, there's hosts of organizations that would love to have you intern with them, research, draft policy papers, make them available to various think tanks, elected officials. So there's a variety of choices out in front of you, and there's, again, no right or wrong answer. You don't have to do this first and then do that second. You can do it any way you want. But it all has to be motivated by one simple thought. I want to serve other human beings. I want to see if I can't illuminate their lives, enrich their lives, make their lives better for my having been a part of their life. And whatever form that takes, as a counselor, a friend, someone you have e-chats with, interact with Facebook, whatever it is, if that's your motivation, you will find you're making a difference in this world, and the world is better off because you're a part of it. The great thing about, well, let me just tell you some practical politics now. The great thing about politics is you have the opportunity to improve people's lives. Unfortunately, at this time, there's no money to do that. My hope is by the time you decide to go into politics, those of you who do it, we'll be out of this economic recession, and the economy will have prospered. More people will be working. There'll be more resources available to government at every level. And so if you have a good idea to do something in any area, there'll be some resources available to allow you to pursue that goal. But right now, I feel so sorry for Arnold. I know he beat me in the recall, but I wouldn't go back there on a bet. I'm asked that question all the time. As a matter of fact, yesterday was the 7th anniversary of the recall. And people say, oh, we miss you. We'd love to have you go back. I say, thank you for the sentiment. You could not pay me enough money to go back. They're trying to pass a budget as I speak. The Assembly just passed it. They had, I think there was at least 7 Republican votes. I think they needed 3. So it looks like it's going to pass. Arnold told me about 3 weeks ago that the budget is 20% less than it was 2 years ago. Now, UC and CSU turn out pretty well in the budget. They're actually going to get more money. But I know you've gone through many lean years, and it's going to take a long time for you to get back to where you were before the recession. But you can just imagine the governor and the legislature, all they're doing is passing out bad news to people who are getting less money than they got the year before or the year before that. And that's not fun, because when you're in politics, everyone expects there's more money next year. Just saying you're going to get the same you got last year, that's a bummer. No one wants to hear that, much less you're going backwards. So you're lucky that you're not getting in politics now, because there's no very few positive feedback mechanisms. You have to be kind of a masochist to get into politics now, because this is there's no good news. There's just nothing you're going to tell people, because they don't care how nicely you explain they're getting less money. They get it. They're getting less money, which means they have to lay people off or reduce whatever they're doing. With education, K through 12, they're getting about $3 billion less. That'll affect class size, That'll affect teacher aides. That might affect fewer computers, fewer advanced placement courses, whatever. There's going to be less available to the people who would prefer to have more. Let me just complete my formal remarks with one other thought. What I would advise you is to find your passion. Find what really, really excites you. And when you're young in life, sometimes that's hard to do. Sometimes you have to live a little longer and experiment with some things, all legal, mind you, that you feel good about. I mean, you can work in soup kitchens, you can be interns, you can be teacher assistants, research assistants, travel around the world. I'm just blown away by the frequency with which young people travel around the world. I want to sound too old, so I won't tell you how limited my travel was before I became governor. But I'm at a Laker game in Los Angeles, by the way. When I was governor, I would always sit in the cheap seats. I would pay for the cost of tickets. I would, every time. My staff, I would not let take a freebie. You know, I was very frugal. So, as a matter of fact, one time the governor of New Jersey called me up. The Nets were playing the Lakers. I'm from L.A. Forgive me for having a Southern California reference here. But and I'd seen him on television sitting courtside, and he says, "Well, we're coming out to play the Lakers for 3 games. Can we go to the game together?" I said, "Absolutely." But let me just tell you where I sit. I sit up in the rafters, and the tickets are $90, and I write a check. Now, you probably want to sit courtside. I think in those days the tickets were like, I don't know, $3,000. Now they're about $6,000 for the playoffs. I mean, I don't know who can afford these things. So he says, "Well, let me think about it, and I'll get back to you." He never got back to me. So clearly he wanted to sit courtside. He wasn't interested in going out and rooting. He wanted to be, you know, I get it. But so you'll enjoy, if you're a Cal graduate, you will enjoy a successful life. You will prosper if money is your primary pursuit. Even if it's not your primary pursuit, you will live well, and you'll have opportunities to do things to impress other human beings. But the trick is, even if your passion is not your primary avocation, in my life, public policy, helping other people was my passion. I spent 31 years. I feel very privileged to have done that. I enjoyed the good, the bad, and there were plenty of both moments, because I knew it was a privilege to preside over the state and do what you can to make it better. But even if it's not going to be your full-time passion, don't ignore it. If you're a lawyer or a doctor or a business person, and your real passion is helping people with AIDS or with some other disease, carve out 3, 4, 5 weeks a year, or if you can't afford that, 2 or 3 weeks, and travel overseas to people afflicted by the disease. Be there for them. It will be so uplifting. It will be so satisfying. It will, you know, you won't be able to wait till the following year when you can take a similar trip. I just went to a charitable event not recently called Operation Smile. And these doctors, I see some nodding heads, so you know what I'm talking about. These doctors travel around the world to operate on young people with cleft palates. And you know, they show the pictures of people, how they look before and how they look afterwards. And I remember being in Vietnam, and they were not going, they had to leave, the time had run out. There was one little girl, and they had to decide they were not going to operate her anyway. They finally changed their mind. They operated on her. I'm getting emotional thinking about it. Anyway, so she comes out on stage and she sings, you know, it's like a incredible emotional moment. And you see the impact these doctors had on her life. They didn't make her a singer. She was a singer. Even with a cleft palate, her mother taught her to sing. You know, she kind of warbled around, and the sound coming out of her wasn't that great. But these doctors had changed a life. Who knows what that young woman would have become. But now, you know, the world is her oyster, and she can do anything she wants. So that is the kind of impact that all of you can have on another human being. And if you choose, if your passion is going to be something you only avail yourself to a portion of your life, make sure you don't put it in a drawer and forget about it, because you will not feel good. You will feel unsatisfied unless you open that drawer for a sizable amount of time every year, pursue that passion, and do what it is that makes you feel committed and complete as a human being. I know you'll do great financially. I know you'll make a big impact on this world, and maybe someday you'll create a university, or you'll create a think tank, or you'll invent a cure for cancer, or you'll just spend time as a mentor changing lives one at a time. Whatever it is, I'm proud of you. I'm excited for you. God bless you. Thank you for inviting me, and I'll be happy to take your questions. Okay, so this is the casual part of it. Yes, ma'am.
So clearly one of the most contested issues is Proposition 19.
Excuse me, is
Proposition 19.
right.
I was wondering, as a former governor, what is your personal stance on this issue, and what do you think the implications of passing this proposition would be on California and the U.S. and even furthermore Mexico?
Okay, well, this second to having gone to Stanford, this is going to elicit the second most boos in the crowd. You know, both candidates for governor and both candidates for attorney general oppose it. This is not something I feel passionately about, but I'm going to oppose it because there's enough substance abuse in life, and I have seen what happens to people who have children when they're addicted, frankly, to more serious forms of substance abuse. That, and there's all kinds of problems. They say, okay, you can cultivate it, you can possess it, you can grow it, you can transport it, but maybe you don't like the kind of marijuana that's made available legally. Maybe you want something that's more addictive. I mean, I can't even think of all the reasons. I can't enumerate all the reasons, but I just think it's going to create more heartache. There'll be there'll be a black market even if it's legalized. The county, you talk about the economic case, the county of, what is it, Humboldt County, that's their economy. They grow marijuana up there. You know, one day a year, the Attorney General goes up. He gives everyone about 30 days notice. So he goes up and lets them know he's going to have a big raid. You know, he's going to crack down on them 1 year, and everyone is prepared for it. So he goes in there, he gets his press, and he doesn't come back for another 365. And people, you know, grow and sell marijuana. So who knows what happened to their economy? I just think I don't see the upside, and I see the downside. Now, am I going to commit suicide if it passes? No. Is it the most important thing to be on the ballot? No. But if you force me to vote on it, I'm going to vote no. I realize that's not a popular answer.
Can people just use these mics when you're asking questions?
Hi, I'm an environmental economics and policy major, and so I've always looked up to you, especially if you're groundbreaking the renewable portfolio standard and all sorts of other legislation you passed. And I was just wondering what really inspired you to go in that direction as a governor, where many governors before you chose to focus on more issues that seemed like more, human and personable to the populace, but you chose to, especially focus on like the environment as a really important issue.
Well, A, thank you, and B, we live on this planet. Let me tell you a story. I was with, I'm sure you've heard of him, Elon Musk, who's Tesla, but he also has a company called Rocket X. I met this man about, I'd say he's in his early 40s. I met this man about 3 years ago, and I said, you have Tesla, that's great, a solar sports car. Are you doing anything else? He said, I'm building a rocket to go to the moon. I go, yeah, that's great. Well, how's that going to work? He said, I'm bidding on a contract with NASA, and I'm going to win. I said, that's great. Who's your competition? Boeing, General Electric, some French company. And he wins. He wins. So he's got the rocket. He's got the Fremont plant up here, the old NUMMI plant. And we're down at SpaceX, and he says, I want to go to Mars, not just to find out how Mars was created, but to see if we can, not colonize, but if human life can exist on Mars. Because I don't think this planet is going to be around for about another 1,000,000 years. No, I don't know, but he's off by whatever. But, you know, he says the planet has a life just like we have a life. And he's thinking about another place where life can be sustained. And so that is just one of the more recent reminders to me that this earth is precious. We have to, it nurtured us, we have to nurture it. We have to respect it, find ways that it can serve human beings, but we can serve it. And, you know, it's in a way part of my faith and, you know, part of my mission in life to see what I can do to protect it. Now, not to the point of protecting where I don't want anything to be built. I mean, I understand you have to have a reasonable accommodation, but that's my mindset. I've always believed that, you know, we are born from this earth, live on this earth. We have a finite life. Earth has a finite life, and we have to find a way to preserve and protect it as best we can.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Given the current economic situation of the state of California, and given that hindsight is 2020, how would you have changed your policies from when you were governor so as to prevent what's going on now?
That's a very good question. Everyone hear the question? As I said earlier today, I was speaking at a conference in San Francisco that's put on by the bond buyer, and it's all about public finance, and everyone has had their prescription for how to make California better, as did I. There's one thing you cannot change, which is what they call the business cycle. Like the night follows the day, recessions follow expansionary periods. It happens every 5 or 6 years. Unfortunately, in government, in good years, when money comes in, every dollar gets disposed of. The Republicans say, this is way too much money. We have to have tax relief. And because currently you need a 2/3 vote to pass the budget, only 2 other states have that requirement, by the way, Arkansas and Rhode Island, not exactly behemoths, you know, compared to, anyway. And the Democrats say, hey, we got all this money. We can cure cancer, we can improve education, this is a one-time opportunity, we have to do it. And because you need their vote, you do it. So what happens is, in good times, you spend every dollar you have, and in bad times, like now, you're up a creek without a paddle. The legislature actually did something, is doing something as I'm speaking to you right now, which is passing a budget that includes a rainy day fund that I've called for when I was governor unsuccessfully. Pete Wilson called for it unsuccessfully. Arnold Schwarzenegger called for it, and I think he's going to be successful, which sets aside a certain amount of money every year and allows the reserve to be built up to 10%. 2 years ago, the state budget was about $105 billion. This current budget is $87 billion. It's almost 20% below. But if we had a reserve 2 years ago, it would be $10 billion sitting there. You cannot use that until the economy falls below a certain agreed-upon benchmark. And then you can draw down on that to buffer the adverse cuts of a recession. If you can't get that, and it looks like we're going to get it today, which doesn't solve our immediate problem, but makes life much better for the next governor, because there'll be an expansionary period at some point in the next year or two, but then we'll go into another recession. So we got to get out of this trough we're in, put aside a little money, and then when the next recession comes, we have a little buffer. We've never had that, and 30 states have some variation on that. I don't know why it's taken us so long, but well, I do know why it's taken us so long. I'll give you a little glimpse in the world of real politics. Everybody who gets money in the budget, whether it's hospitals, the environment, schools, higher education, when money is there, they want it. It's there. Look, it's right there. Give it to me. Just pass it. Give it to me. Legislators can't help themselves. They want to say yes. They want to make people happy. Governors are the same way. The only way out of that is to say, well, we have a constitutional requirement, because this idea, if it passes, will go on the ballot. I'm pretty sure people will pass it. That's the way most people live their life. They like to think of it as an emergency. There's some way they can accommodate it. They're not just totally desperate asking for help. So we'll start to build up a reserve so that the next downturn won't be quite as unpleasant as this downturn. So how would I change things? I would do the very thing I called for as governor unsuccessfully, Pete Wilson unsuccessfully, Arnold without success until tonight. Will it solve the problems of people who didn't get what they wanted out of this budget? No. But that, coupled with a couple other changes that I'll speak very briefly to, will make life better for the next governor. The two other changes are the passage of a citizens redistricting commission that actually draws the legislative lines in which legislators run it. For years, legislators have drawn them themselves, as well as congressional lines. And you will not be shocked to learn the last 10 years, 99% of those legislators won. Shocking. They drew their own lines. They picked their own voters, so it's not, they're going to win. Now, what does that mean if they're going to win? That means they don't have to solve the budget problem because they know they're going to get reelected. Even if this budget hadn't passed tonight, an election is 3.5 weeks, they're all going to get elected. Every single legislator will get elected. If you call up the Secretary of State, no one's going to lose. So reapportionment is now going to be drawn by people who just want to draw as fair a plan as they can. Frankly, anyone drawing the plan, you guys drawing the plan, will come up with a fairer plan than exists today. The combination of that reform plus something called the open primary, which Arnold championed the redistricting reform. I supported it, campaign for him. We were in a movie together called Gerrymandering. That's the name of the movie. By the way, this is not a partisan redistricting. It's an incumbent protection. So the Republicans get a certain number of seats they are guaranteed will win. The Democrats get a certain number of seats. That's what we have now. So the open primary, also opposed by all the parties. Arnold took the lead, and I supported Common Cause, AARP. It says we're going to have an election at the state level like a municipal election. So the top two people run off. Everyone gets the same ballot. Whatever your party is, you get the same ballot. You can vote for whoever you want. And the top two people, whether two Republicans, two Democrats, two members of the Green Party, they run off, and the winner gets elected. Now, I'm a proud Democrat, been a Democrat my whole life, but I got to tell you, partisan politics is not working in Sacramento. That's why we have these budgets late every year. Why does that matter to you? It costs more to pay. First of all, you can't get student aid while the budget isn't passed. You have to pay more to pass California bonds to build new schools and new buildings in the university. Vendors don't get paid, and the rest of the country laughs at us and says we don't know what we're doing. So getting about 20% of the legislators, and that's my estimate, about 20% of the legislators will end up in competitive races through the combination of the open primary, which is now law, and the redistricting reform through the Citizens Redistricting Commission. And that'll be plenty. That'll be plenty to enact the budget on time. And we'll start acting like we should act. My first two budgets were on time. I started in March. The legislator was rebelling. We don't start in March. We start in May. I said, yeah, you start in May, and that's why you're always late. We're going to start on time. The third year, they said, take a hike. We're not starting on time. But at least I got two in there on time. I think the combination of these two reforms, plus this spending limit, I'm not sure if there's a spending limit, but effectively through the back door, they have a spending limit with this rainy day fund because the rainy day fund comes off the top. Those three reforms will really get California back on track starting in 2012 and make life easier for the next governor, whoever he or she is. So those are three things that I would like to have had when I was governor, but at least the next governor will have. Yes?
Thank you. Hello. First of all, I would like to thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you. And thank you for the invitation. I neglected to thank you at the outset.
Thank you. And my question is, where do you stand in regards to an immigration reform? And also more specifically, what's your stand for the DREAM Act?
What my stand for what?
The DREAM Act.
I very much believe that we should have a comprehensive immigration reform. I believe that we need to be serious about border protection. I think the President's doing the right thing there. If you've never been to the border, you should just do that someday. Because I went there in 1997, the INS, then the INS, now it's called ICE, runs it. I remember it was a Saturday night, I got invited down as lieutenant governor. Like 3,000 people walked across the border to Tijuana. Just nobody stopped. Just walked across. You know, they're having it was like walking across the campus here. I said, "What is this?" Now with all the stuff going on, with more border patrol, electronic fence, all this stuff, I think if you went down today, there might be 50 or 70 people across the day. So we do need to protect the border. That is the law of the land, unless we want to change it, which I don't argue for changing it now. So we protect the border, at the same time pass comprehensive immigration reform, which does give people a path, first to legalize their status, and then to become citizens. Now, on the DREAM Act, I passed the DREAM Act in California. I was the first governor to do that, that allows, if you graduated from high school in this state and spent 3 years at a high school and get into a CSU or UC or community college on your own merit, it used to be you have to pay out-of-state tuition. That was federal law. I changed that and said you pay in-state tuition. So that, I can't tell you how many people I run into now who said, you know, you allowed me to go to community college or Cal State or UC system. My life is different because if I didn't get a college degree, you know, I'd have no chance. I still have problems, I still have challenges, but at least I have a college degree that gives me more opportunity than if I didn't have it. So I favor the DREAM Act, and I very much favor a combination happening simultaneously. The border still needs to have more people patrolling it and more protection, and we need to start comprehensive immigration reform at the same time. Yes, sir.
It seems that every time I look at the news, I'm reminded how many problems California has. We have a volatile tax structure which pulls the rug out from under us every time there's a recession. We have an initiative process where the special interest can just pay people to put stuff on a ballot.
Right.
And the worst of all, there's the 2/3 requirement to pass a budget, which is impossibly high. So in spite of all these systemic problems, what can a governor really do?
Well, you just enumerated a few of the many hurdles a governor has to deal with. But again, nobody makes you run for this job. You got to want it, and it's even if you want it, doesn't mean you're going to get it. But I don't think you should complain once you got a job. I tell you the story of my wonderful wife, Sharon, is someone who's always full of joy, always happy, and sometimes I'm in a good mood, sometimes I'm not. One time I came home complaining, I'd been governor for about 3 weeks, and I said, sweetheart, the legislature, there's this incredible pent-up demand. They haven't had a Democrat for 16 years. They want me to do this, and want to do that. I just want to focus on education. She says, snap out of it. You spent your whole life trying to be governor. Now just enjoy it. The good, the bad, the in-between. I mean, if you didn't want this job, you shouldn't have run for it. So that got me back in the right frame of mind. It's hard being in public life today. I spoke about that earlier. It's hard because there's no money. It's hard to make people happy. But the reform is on the way. I mentioned 3 reforms. There's one on the ballot that deals with the 2/3 vote requirement to pass a budget. Not the 2/3 vote requirement to pass taxes, but we have a 2/3 vote requirement just to pass a budget. Only, as I say, Arkansas and Rhode Island have that. And the proposal, I think it's Proposition 25, is to make that a majority vote, which I think makes sense because if there's a tax in the budget, you'll need a 2/3 vote anyway. So generally the taxes, most years you're not raising taxes. We just look like we're so incompetent that we're going into mid-October before we pass the budget. Lots of people are not getting paid. Jay Leno's having a field day making fun of us. And there's reputational damage where, you may not remember this name, but Jack Welch was the head of General Electric for a very long time. General Electric happens to own Universal Studios, although they're selling it to Comcast. But except for those studios, he said, I don't want another person working for General Electric in California. That state is so screwed up, I don't want anybody in my company working here. Well, if you're looking for a job, if your children are looking for a job, that's not good to have a big company like General Electric saying, we're not going to put anybody in California. Intel, which is a great company, years and years ago said, we're not building any more fab facilities in California. You guys are just wacko out here, just screwed up. We're going someplace else. And they have. So you don't want that to happen if you can avoid it. Now, sometimes corporations are irrational in what they want, and you have to say no. But the thing we get penalized for is we just don't do anything on time. We're kind of stumble bums. We always, when we pass a budget, it's always papered over with very, very rosy predictions of where revenue is coming from, and this one is as well. You know, again, I think, you know, it's hard. It's a hard job to be governor, but we are making real reform. I've been talking for years about redistricting reform. We have it. Open primary, we have it. It looks like we have a rainy day fund. Maybe we'll get a majority vote. Oh, and the other thing they have on the majority vote, you'll love this. Legislators and the governor don't get paid ever for every day the budget is late. You like that one? So that would go from July 1 to October, what is it today, October 7th? They wouldn't get paid. Right now, their pay is deferred until the budget is passed, but they get a big check after the budget is passed. And I have another proposal. You can't fundraise. You can't raise money for your campaign from the time the budget is due until it's actually passed. Because guess what's happened? When there's a budget impasse, the legislative leaders, there's only 4 of them, say, okay, everyone else, all 120 of you, you can go home and have a good time. That's code for go out and raise money. And then the 4 of us will work it out with the governor and call you back. Well, if you can't raise money and you're not getting paid, guess what the rest of those 120 people are going to do? They're going to sit around and make damn well sure that the legislative leaders figure something out. Because A, they want to get paid, and B, they want to fundraise. So now we're beginning to align the legislator's interest with the voter's interest. And all those reforms, except the one about not being able to fundraise, have either happened or will be on the ballot and could pass this fall. So that's a lot of progress. It's still a tough job being governor of California because the initiative process can be a challenge. But again, if you don't want the job, you shouldn't run for it. I'll come back to you, but let's just go to this gentleman right here in the greenish shirt. Do we have a microphone? I guess we don't need a microphone.
Yes. Every year we have to vote on maybe 8 or 10 propositions. Most of the people in the state probably don't know very much about them. And earlier this year, there were 2 propositions that were put on the ballot by corporations that were doing that for their own interest. So what type of initiative reform would you suggest for the state?
Yeah, that's a good question because I want to, I've been pretty tough on the legislators, but I think we as voters have to take some blame because we like to vote for things that sound good to us. So you guys were too young then, but I voted for something way back in the 90s to require that 42% of every dollar in the state treasury goes to public education. That was a good idea. And then we voted and said that the state can no longer steal money from the cities and counties. That sounded like a good idea. And then we voted that we can't steal money from the gas tax, the transportation fund. And then we had some crazy idea called the GAN limit, which was some complicated formula that says when revenues rise so much over the previous 3 years, you have to rebate money. I was governor in 2001. The Department of Finance called me up and said, we have to give back $1 billion. I said, why is that? Because we exceeded the revenue, the GAN limit. The GAN limit was passed in 1990. I didn't know it was still alive. I didn't know it was still effective. So we gave back $1 billion by reducing the sales tax, which probably in Alameda County probably was 8.5% to 8.25%. It was $1 billion. Nobody even knew about it. And then the economy was already starting to decline. And that was $1 billion worth of cuts we had to make in the budget to account for that, giving that $1 billion back. So all these things voters put on the ballot. What would I change differently? No initiative can go on the ballot unless it has a defined funding source in the initiative. You want to have an after-school program like Arnold wanted? Fine. Show us how we're going to pay for it. Because guess what? If you say, and I like Arnold. I've been very publicly supportive of him. I commend him for getting this rainy day fund through, and there's actually pension reform in this budget, which I think makes sense given the current economics. But his rainy day, his after-school program just said, that'll be funded. Okay, so what does that mean? That means there's a straw in the budget for higher education. There's a straw for K through 12. There's a straw for the environment. There's a straw for healthcare. And now we have a straw for after-school programs. So somehow everyone else has to pay for the after-school program. Bottom line, don't put an initiative on the ballot unless you say how you're going to pay for it. Either you provide a new funding source, or you say the money comes out of these other people who are currently getting it. That way the voter sees both sides of the question. He sees the benefit, but he also sees the cost. Yes, sir.
It's an inspiring speech that you gave earlier. I was wondering, sometimes life sort of beyond one's force, beyond one's control, creates setbacks. Clearly, you had one. I remember there was a time where we all thought you were being groomed to be president.
Yeah, that thought never occurred to me, by the way. I had my hands full with being governor. But go ahead.
I was wondering, in line with your earlier talk about, these bright futures we have, and maybe if you could share that period of after the recall vote, how do you deal with that? How do you recover? What was your daily routine? I mean, because clearly some part of your passion was sort of without being actively dealing with it, all of a sudden was taken away. So maybe you can speak a little bit about it if it's not too sensitive. Could it be helpful?
Well, yeah, I'd be happy to answer your question. It was not the most enjoyable part of my life. But I try and look at every life experience and see if there's a plus to it. Now, the obvious minus was I couldn't finish out my term. That was my passion. And the voters were saying, to use Arnold's expression, hasta la vista, baby. And that was not fun. That was not fun. But I had about 6 weeks from the vote, which was actually, the anniversary was yesterday, 7th anniversary, to think about what I was going to do. And everyone advised me, don't do anything for a while. I mean, see if you can get a couple consulting relationships, travel, see what opportunities might be out there, and just someone put it to me, you have to take the breaks that life gives you. I don't mean break in terms of a good break, but this was a break from a job that had been my whole career, had consumed me. And there's obviously a decompression period, but I could travel. I went to China, and then I came back, and I went to Taiwan, and did some other traveling around the United States, gave some speeches. And slowly I got back in the swing of things. I got associated with UCLA School of Public Policy. I lectured there. And then I joined a law firm, Loeb & Loeb. And I continue to be active in politics. And I said to myself, you can't control what happens to you in life, but you can control how you react to what happens to you in life. And I was not going to let this be the defining moment of my life. I was going to get off the campus, get back, and be as productive a person as I could possibly be. And that's what I have done, and that's what I would encourage you to do. And if I can digress for a second, because this is a thought I wanted to share with you and didn't. You are going to experience a lot of success in your life, but you're going to experience some failure. And I know for all the A-types in this room, not only A-types personality-wise, but in terms of your grades, it's a little sheltered. You're a little sheltered being in the university, because when you work hard and do a good job, write a good paper, take a good exam, you'll probably get a good result. I'm a lawyer. You can argue the best case imaginable before a judge. You can have the best brief before an appellate court, and you can still lose the case for reasons totally beyond your control. You can be a transactional lawyer and drafted all the papers properly, but the deal doesn't go through because your client can't raise the money for the transaction. So in life, you will experience some failure, even if it's totally undeserved. I'm not saying my recall was totally undeserved. I sure made my share of mistakes. But whether it's deserved or not, don't let that be the end of your life. Just get off the canvas and say, okay, I lost that. I'll take the blame, and I'm going to just continue on from here and be as productive and positive as I can be. And you will be amazed if you can accept what life has given you with some grace and have the courage to carry on. You'll be amazed what good things come your way. They're walking like I have time for, all right, 2 more questions. So we're going to ask for you first, and then I'll go to the back of the room.
So,
Yes, yeah, I'm calling on you.
So I guess let's comment on what is nice. I think this year's gubernatorial election. What do you think about the policies of Meg Whitman and Jerry Brown, whether they can implement it, and if they can, like their impact on like the state?
Okay, I'm going to be right up front about my biases here because I want to be candid with you. I started my career as chief of staff for Jerry Brown, so I am for him. But let me tell you, and you know, I readily acknowledge that Meg Whitman has done some very good things in her life, and it was a huge success at eBay. But the skills to be a CEO are very different. I'm not saying the CEO can't be a good governor, but they're very different skill sets because your primary job as a governor is to persuade the legislature to cast votes they desperately don't want to cast. I don't mean they're against it. They are desperately against it. Because right now, in the ditch we're in, there's only two things you can do. You have to reduce programs and you have to raise taxes. And Republicans, if they raise taxes, they know they'll get beat in their next primary. And if Democrats cut programs anymore, they'll get beat in their next primary. So it's a very, very hard job. Why am I for Jerry? Because you have never met a man more frugal than Jerry Brown. You have not met them. Catch this. So he won't live in the mansion. He won't he won't drive in Reagan's limo. He has me get a Plymouth for him. So, and I'll tell you the story. So he gives his inauguration speech in the Capitol. You know, in the transition, the Reagan limo was driving us around. But now he's going to see his car for the first time. And I called up General Services. I said, just give me a car that you would give a legislator. Should we get a new one? No, just get one that you would give this year. So it's 75, whatever you have around, 75. That you would give a cabinet officer or a legislator. Well, we'll give him a Plymouth. I said, okay, fine. What colors? We got 3 colors. We got green, white, and blue. I'm thinking green, no. White, no. This is before the environmental movement took hold. You know, so otherwise I should have chosen green. So I said, blue. Blue, I'm thinking, of course, dark blue. So we're leaving the Capitol. We're walking across Capitol ground, and we head toward this car at the end of Capitol Park. There's only one car sitting there. And it is like, let's see who's got a blue on that can do justice to this. I don't think anyone does. It's like a real pale blue, like a, you know, almost a effeminate pale blue, can I say that? So he looks at the car, he looks at me, he looks at the car, he looks at me, he says, oh, great, that's not it, is it? I said, I'm afraid it is. That was it for 8 years. He has a hole in his rug. I'm the chief of staff. I say, by the way, I've ordered, a hole about this size in the governor's office, right next to the desk. And I said, by the way, I've asked General Services to repair the hole. He says, you did what? I said, well, it's unseemly. People come in here, you're the governor. First of all, he wouldn't have the rug changed. Everyone else has the rug changed. He said, no, Reagan, I'll just use your rug, even though I used it for 8 years, I'll use it. So they could get a hole. So I said, it's your governor, you can't have a hole in your rug. That hole has saved us at least $100 million, he says. People cannot come in here and berate me for not giving their private pet project money when I get a hole in my rug. Leave that hole alone. I'll tell you one other story. This is a true story. So I'm talking to a guy who's actually not going to vote for Jerry, although I think I have him almost back to neutral. So he says, actually, I was this is when Jerry had a house in Southern California. This is the guy talking, I was the gas inspector for Southern California Gas Company. So I come to a house in Laurel Canyon where Jerry lived, and you name the street, and I looked at this thing, says Edmund G. Brown. Okay, so he goes up there, Jerry's not there, but the security's there. He says, well, I got to turn on the pilot light to test how much gas you're using. Oh, no, the governor doesn't want us to use the pilot light. He's not using any gas. He's using very little electricity. He really believes in, kind of lowering his, his environmental profile. We're not talking about carbon emissions but, well, I have to turn on the pilot pipe to do my test. I'll get fired, he says, if you turn on it. Finally, he begs the guy, I'll just turn it on for 30 seconds. That's all I need. And he came away and he said, this guy is cheap. I have never met anyone so cheap. So this guy is frugal. And if anybody can manage expectations these difficult times, he can do it. And he didn't raise taxes. He did raise the gas tax 2 cents. Not income, not sales. 1.9 million jobs created in 8 years, 20% of all the jobs in America. No one will ever create 1.9 million jobs in California, ever, in the history of the state from now forward. It's just not going to happen. The state was growing. And he had a $5 billion surplus when the entire budget was only $20 billion. Now, if those aren't credentials for these difficult financial times, I don't know what is. So on the merits, I think he would be the best governor, because just to cruise in there without any clue of what's going on, by clue meaning you have to know the personality of the legislators, you have to know to work with all the insiders and affect change. I mean, Arnold, I love him, but, you know, is the state financially better off? I mean, best case, it's the same as I left it. So, I mean, you really, really need to know the territory and need to have some experience in order to do a good job. One more.
Would that be a wrap?
That's a wrap?
Yeah.
Okay. You guys are great. Thank you so much. Go Bears.